Mark.
Mark. Hello and welcome to the Score Attack podcast. My name is Mirog and with me is Johnny. Hello, Johnny.
Hello, Miro.
How are you, Johnny?
I'm pretty well. I just woke up. I've slept for. I am actually scared to count how many hours. I've
Yeah,
slept through the entire day, but now I'm full of energy and ready for podcasting. How are
yeah,
you?
I'm fine, but now people will suspect that you actually don't do anything. You just like sleep and wake up to record a podcast and then leave and go to sleep again.
I mean, that's kind of been the past week or so. I'm not sure why. I guess I've been a bit sick, but not a lot, so that might have a bit to do with it. But
Well, every evening so far I've been, I'm gonna go to bed early, and nope, it's like video editing and me, we are not friends, and I don't think we'll ever will be.
yeah,
We'll
the
actually go into more detail about because you're probably wondering what kind of video editing this is an audio podcast, but we have a surprise for you. Woo. So what you been playing, Johnny?
I've been playing the original Deus Ex. The,
Okay.
mostly. I've been playing some other things too, but like that's the big thing. It's that this is a game with a reputation, right? So
Yeah. So if you say anything bad, we're gonna lose more subscribers.
I'm not gonna be particularly negative actually, but have you played the Deus Ex?
Well, I tried playing the first one, but like long after its time, and I kind of played the first mission and went through the first hub and wasn't particularly interested, I guess. Although
It's
I had that happen with the new DSX too, so I don't know. Maybe I'm just not a Deus Exer.
it, it took me 2 tries to get through that first level before I went. Okay, maybe this is actually interesting because the way it does everything is so unconventional and you don't really figure out why it's really clever immediately. But I mean, what genre would you put Deus Ex into?
Well, based on the first level, I'd say like RPG stealth shooter.
Right. It tries to play with all of those things. Mostly, it's a stealth shooter with a few RPG stat elements. It's its reputation on the internet is like this proto FPS RPG, like the one that did everything right and everyone else copies from it. But the RPG parts in Deus Ex are barely even there. It's
Well,
just like you have a stat part, you have like character progression. That's the thing it takes from RPGs.
okay.
But everything else from you have in a standard RPG, like these different characters you can interact with and have long discussions and branching conversations and stuff like that, barely exists at all. You have a few branching conversations, but they're almost all like tactical decisions you get to make. It's very, very rare that you get to actually make a plot or even character decision.
Wait, so was the first DSX before or after System Shock 2?
I've. Oh god, I'd have to look that up actually.
Well, yeah, I'm asking mostly because I played System Shock 2 and that was, obviously an RPG shooter. I mean, you can't really deny it. I think the first one was more clicky and less shooty. From what I've seen, I've never played it, but like since you said it was like Deus Ex was a proto RPG, I kind of have to wonder.
Deus Ex was 1 year after System Shock 2.
Yeah,
And
I'd probably go with System Shock as being, proto RPG shooter-ishy thingy.
yeah, but Deus Ex starts to try to deviate. It feels like they didn't have time to finish it. It feels like they wanted to put more of an RPG into Deus Ex than there ever was in System Shock
Hmm.
or or Bioshock or anything like that. Like Bioshock is probably a more honest port of what System Shock 2 was doing than
Uh,
Deus Ex is.
I could talk a bit about Bioshock versus System Shocks personally. So,
I don't have
I really agree with that, but yeah.
I don't have a lot of experience with System Shock, so I might be just talking about out of my ass. I played
Yeah,
a little bit of it,
yeah, yeah.
but it's probably somewhere in between Deus Ex and anyway. Like as I said, I took several tries to manage to get into the first Deus Ex because I first started just walked into like this first level and immediately got shot, and the only strategy I had available to me was basically like run back to my allies and let the giant robots take care of the enemy shooting me. And it just seemed like that shouldn't be allowed. It seemed broken somehow, and then I went further into it, and I expected the stealth system to behave like other stealth systems, and got killed. And I'd made this mistake several times because I had tried to change the quick save key to F5 and didn't realize that I didn't save because it has F5 as a dedicated control key for a different function, and you can't change that. So I thought I was quick saving and got killed, and restart game.
I don't recall
Okay,
the first level being particularly hard.
it's not. Well, it's hard in that it just throws the game at you and is like, here, figure it out. And it's not like what you'd expect playing modern RPG FPSs.
I mean, like, if you were going into it expecting modern RPG FPSs, yeah, I'd expect a bad time.
I mean, it wasn't that I expected it, it was that I had no real experiences with the particular way that Deus Ex 1 deals with these models. Like, the stealth model is taken from the original Thief. That's
Okay.
basically what it is. It's about lighting and sound. It's not like about line of sight so much, though that does come into it. It's not so much about vision cones as it is uh, how well lit are you, and you have no indicator for that, unlike Thief. And how loud are you? To the point where there's a difference between sneaking and crouch sneaking, because crouch sneaking is even less loud. I'm not really sure why that is, but at some point that starts mattering for stealth, and stealth is a huge part of Deus Ex.
Yeah.
But the thing I found, like the first thing that the game does that really impresses me, is that I peek out through a corner in the first level, and I just stay peeked because I want to see where this guard is going, and eventually he's like, there's a guy peeking out from behind that wall and starts shooting at me. Games don't do that. Like, name another game that acknowledges that the enemies should be able to see you if you do that.
Mm, don't like stealth games generally give you a risk reward with peeking. I mean, you're not invulnerable with peeking.
You're not invulnerable, but your enemies generally do not see you when you peek out in stealth games.
Yeah, generally they just like walk in your direction.
They act like you're still completely behind cover,
Yeah.
even though you're not. Deus Ex just doesn't. It's just like, no, you're peeking. And so the risk reward becomes, because Deus Ex has no cover system, there's no third person mode to just flip into to take a look. Unlike Human Revolution, which just deliberately goes into third person to make sure that the stealth is super easy in that one. In the original Deus Ex, you have the risk reward of like, look out for a second and hope they don't see you. It's so that's like the first sign that, okay, this may be onto something. Then there's the shooting system. Like, Deus Ex 1 has this thing that no later FPS RPGs seem to have wanted to use, which is that you can't just aim and shoot at someone. You have to actually like stand still and aim in on them before you can start shooting. So you can't just point a gun and start shooting and expect to be accurate. So in that first mission, I picked the option to have this tranquilizer crossbow as one of the three
Yeah.
weapons I could have picked,
Yeah, I went with that too.
which is that tranquilizer crossbow is kind of shit, but that's another matter. It takes way too long for enemies to go down. Even if you hit them in the head with it, it just takes ages for them to actually fall asleep. But having to crawl around the level, like peeking around, waiting just long enough that you have a decent chance at hitting something, firing off a crossbow and sneaking back into cover, was just like this really awesome risk-reward element of like, how long am I willing to be out of cover to get a good shot at this guy?
That sounds nothing like Human Revolution.
No, Human Revolution is Deus Ex as filtered through the modern school of FPS and stealth design. It's
And
not
Orange.
stealth. Sure. It's not stealth as a way to depower the player. It's stealth as a way to make the player even more powerful.
Well, I mean, like, Human Revolution felt one of those games where you have three choices, and all three choices are valid in the sense of we're not going to screw your build over, except for the bosses, I mean. Whereas, it didn't feel like, I don't know, Vampire the Masquerade, where it lets you, approach different situations in different ways and get different outcomes for that.
Bloodlines is like the ultimate other, like, that's the thing that Deus Ex doesn't manage to be. Deus Ex never manages to do the Bloodlines thing of just talking your way out of a situation. The few times where you can talk your way out of a situation, that literally means that you have found a specific information on a computer that will give you access to a new dialogue option that will automatically pass that part of the game for you.
Yeah.
There's no like, okay, what would be the clever thing to say here? That doesn't exist.
Well, I'm fine with that. I mean,
I'm fine with that as well. It just wasn't what I expected after hearing people talk about the game and playing Human Revolution, which very much tries to be an RPG and a role-playing game. Let's make a distinction there. RPG as in the mechanical genre and role-playing game as in the narrative thing.
okay.
Deus Ex 1 is an RPG, but it's not a role-playing game. Does
Okay,
that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So in a fight between Brody protagonist and metal cutout protagonist from Deus Ex, who would win?
I mean, the the Deus Ex 1 protagonist is just the most ruthless asshole imaginable.
Okay, so unlike the Human Revolution protagonist, who is just an asshole.
I mean, the Human Revolution protagonist can be a ruthless asshole if you want, or just a passive-aggressive asshole if you want.
I mean, in my best tries and best intentions, he was passive aggressive asshole.
Yeah. JC Denton, because you don't have any dialogue options, he bases some of the things you say on how you played through a level, but the way he interprets this becomes kind of crazy very quickly. So the second level, you're supposed to storm this fort, and there's a back entrance, which I didn't have the skills and equipment to actually gain access through. So I had to do the main entrance, but I still tried to sneak. So I snuck in. I'm not sure like how I managed that. That shouldn't have been possible probably, but I managed to sneak in, and along the way I have to kill like one guard. This alerts the other guards, which causes my allies from outside the fort to just run in and gun everyone down.
Okay.
So that's how it goes down from my perspective. After you get back to base, and you go to see the quartermaster for equipment for the next job, JC Denton is just like, yeah, I went in guns blazing, you should have seen the body count. It's like, you fucking asshole! Like, that one wasn't what happened at all. You snuck in, got seen by a guy, killed the guy who saw you, and then your allies took out the rest of them.
Well, that's some very deep characterization. Maybe he's lying to himself and others that he, respected within the community.
It's not that subtle at all. But what actually is subtle, the thing that Deus Ex 1 does that Human Revolution doesn't do, is that it actually talks about transhumanism and like augmentation and stuff like that. While that's in the background a lot in Human Revolution, none of the characters actually have anything interesting to say about the subject. In Deus Ex 1, if you just listen to the guards talking, like enemy grunts have more interesting things to say on transhumanism and augmentation than any of the main characters in the entirety of Deus Ex Human Revolution.
Well, that sounds more immersive, at least. I mean, if you compare to current political or, popular topics that happen now and then, everyone tries to get involved with their own interpretation of it. That's reasonable.
Yeah, but like, I mean, I really like Deus Ex 1's just. It's one of the yankiest games I have ever played. It is so Yankee, it is so hard finished mechanically, but it's still so great because the parts that aren't finished aren't the ones that necessarily the game relies on too much. The parts that are finished, the parts that are well thought out, are the ones that it relies on, and it just the writing is ham-fisted as fuck. Like at the very start of the game, there's an introduction cutscene where two of the big bads stand and discuss how they are going to take over the world. Like, that's the introductory cutscene. This group they belong to uses imagery. Their logo is like a gigantic stone fist grasping a globe. They're pretty clearly the bad guys here.
Probably.
And so okay. That's first mission. You eventually get to the terrorist leader who started this whole mess you're trying to solve, and you walk up to him, and like the first thing he says is, "I think the government created the virus." It's just like out of the blue, like the biggest, dumbest conspiracy theory reveal ever. It's so bad, but despite being that ham-fisted, that clumsy, it still manages to be like to pose real questions about transhumanism, how and like questions of how humans manage to govern themselves. It has a critique on capitalism inside of it. Like that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in modern RPGs. Modern RPGs is just so happy to like put some political questions in the background and then never have the characters have the characters don't have strong real opinions about them based on like actual things.
Well, yeah, generally it's either put in the background or never talk about it, and then all of a sudden they're in your face about it for 10 minutes and then go away.
I mean, Dragon Age talks about
it talks about racism by using the metaphor of werewolves killing elves.
Yeah, it uses the metaphors of like elves are slaves, elves are these oppressed peoples, and the dwarves are alternatively nomadic loners or loners that live up underground, and in the end, the most the most hard-hitting thing not Deus Ex. The most hard-hitting thing Dragon Age has to say about racism is we should probably not be racist.
But then, like, you go back to the age-old keep your politics out my video games and all that, and maybe they didn't want. I mean, maybe they didn't want to focus on that. They clearly wanted to focus on the context of controversial topics within their created game world.
I mean, sure, that's cool, but after playing Deus Ex, it just feels a bit lame compared to what Deus Ex does, because, like, you overhear a conversation between two guards, so you don't have to hear this conversation. But apologies,
No
I'm
worries.
being a bit slow today. um, the conversation basically uh, is one guard being like, well, this guy, this mech character, seems a bit outdated. What is he even doing with this organization? Like, what's his worth? And the other character is like, but if if we keep judging people like this way, if we keep just making people into mechs and instead of like keeping them as people, then instead of you being able to like evolve and become better at things, it starts becoming a matter of upgrades, like upgrading your hardware like you would a computer. That fundamentally changes something about the humanity of people in a way that soldier clearly considers bad. And like, holy shit, like you put that in there as a conversation between two nameless fucking guards. And I'm not articulating this particularly well. The game does a much better job of representing that
No,
opinion.
I get what you mean.
But like, that's kind of mind blowing. That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I mean, again, Deus Ex is pretty darn hardcore, so I don't know, maybe it's because games are mainstream, maybe because you can't pose the hard-hitting questions, and now we have to rely on lesser budget titles with lesser risk to actually pose those questions.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's about budget, isn't it? Deus Ex
Yeah,
came out at a time where we didn't talk, where budgets weren't like that huge.
yeah, and I think I haven't played BioShock Infinite. I know it covers controversial topics, but according to the people who have played it, it doesn't do a particularly good job about it.
And uh,
I
Deus
mean,
Ex Deus Ex came out at the end of like the era where cyberpunk was a thing,
yeah,
where it was like a big thing. Because as we start to get closer and closer to that reality, the cyberpunk reality, the augmented people, the constantly connected reality. I mean, we already achieved the constantly connected part of that reality.
yeah,
It becomes much harder to talk about in a believable and easy fashion.
yeah. That's also true. I mean, that's one of the reasons I think I'm generally um not a fan of, I guess, like hard SF, like one that goes into too much detail. Probably because of that. Because okay, how do you stay believable? In this day and age.
Well, I mean,
I usually like. I mean, the sci-fi I like is the like pretty off the wall kind of stuff that you just like doesn't even theorize. It just works.
I actually like pretty hard sci-fi, but hard sci-fi doesn't have to theorize either. The only difference between hard sci-fi and soft sci-fi is hard sci-fi only plays with uh, technology that we currently believe to be achievable, while soft sci-fi just throws in a bit of magic technology as well.
Yeah,
Most sci-fi throw in a bit of magic technology in the form of hyperspeed. Anything that's set sufficiently far in the future will probably act like hyperspeed is a real thing, even though we see no way of actually doing it in real life currently.
yeah. Well, in any case, I think we can agree that the best sci-fi is Mega Man as interpreted by Proto Man.
Um, sure, that's the best, most believable sci-fi.
Yeah.
No, the proto are amazing.
Okay, I'll definitely check out those. I mean, I should have probably checked it out, and I'll get yelled at. But my backlog of games people will yell at me for not playing is pretty big so far. I still have to play properly through Baldur's Gate and Planescape Torment.
Baldur's Gate 1. Are you talking about Baldur's Gate 1?
I'm talking about any Baldur's Gate. I played one a
Okay.
bit and then went off the beaten track and got killed by an ogre.
I think 1 is kind of bullshit. I think it's kind of bad.
Yeah,
Baldur's
but
Gate 2 is amazing, but I'm not a fan of the first.
yeah, but I want to play Planescape Torment. I mean, the only of the classical RPGs I played was Fallout 2, and that went pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with Planescape Torment is that it, it's set in the same engine that Baldur's Gate is, which means the combat is like extremely clumsy.
That's what
And
everyone tells me. They just tell me, "Oh, just focus on all non-physical stats, and you'll do fine." Then I get killed.
like the reason you want to focus on like wisdom, intelligence, charisma is that that's the interesting way to play the game. You can
Yeah,
focus on a combat character, but the Planescape Torment is not good because of its combat. Planescape Torment is good because of its writing, and you want to access as much of it as possible. It's by no means a perfect game, but if you play with it on its terms, and if you play the way it it wants you to play. That's a shitty way to design a game anyway, but it, in this case it's worth going through that hoop and just
yeah,
playing it the way it wants you to. And then you start getting into other options on how to handle specific situations, but you kind of need to put the stats into making the character who can even make those decisions.
yeah. Anyway, speaking of clunky games that haven't aged well, have you ever heard of D?
Don't think so.
Okay, so have you heard of Kenji Eno, the late Japanese game designer?
Yes.
What have you heard of him?
Not a lot that I could tell you offhand. I know I've heard the name several times before.
Okay, so he is essentially one. I mean, he passed away pretty recently, and he was like one of the most prominent background developers, as in he wasn't generally too much in the spotlight. Like he was in the spotlight for people who were really into Japanese game development and knew about it, but he wasn't like Keiji Inafune or Shinji Mikami. He was more or less that guy from that guy that which I, from what I gather, everybody in the Japanese game industry knew of, and everybody who was into hardcore Japanese games knew about. Uh,
But he wasn't a rock star.
no, he wasn't a rock star, and the thing about him was so he was I read like his interviews and I read about him and he was kind of like brilliantly insane, but not insane as in this guy, you know, he's out of it. More like a person who had a very particular way of perceiving game design, or as I came to learn, the person that David Cage or Peter Molyneux try to be.
Okay.
And so D is a point and click. Well, it's not even a point and click. It's actually a look and interact adventure game in the first person for the PlayStation 1, and
Okay.
it comes on 3 discs,
Okay.
and one disc takes roughly 40 minutes to complete because the entire game has a hard time limit of 2 hours to complete with no pause and no saving. So you have to
Wait.
play the game in one go.
Wait. How did they?
Okay, here's how it goes. Here's how it goes. So so um you play a female character called Laura who I'm not sure of the background of. I think the background is mostly in the instructions booklet. But you go to a hospital and see that in which I assume she works, and everybody there has been massacred. And then a portal appears and drags her into a castle. So and she has to escape from that castle. And for some reason, that castle is controlled or inhabited by her father, who she hasn't seen in a while. And the odd things that happen are um, the game. So this looks like an FMV game. It looks like all the interactions are pre-rendered movies. I'm
But
not
they're
sure.
not.
I'm not sure whether that's true. So it's good enough that
Okay.
it looks extremely old. It looks extremely dated. But I was playing this with my friend. We decided, okay, might as well try the game. And for his first several motions, where he looked to the side. I thought the cinematic was still going, that the character was now in first person mode, just like looking around. No, that was actually him looking around.
Okay.
Because when you press left, right, up, and down, you go to predetermined spots. But but everything looks so smooth, even all the interactions, that it's very, very hard to tell whether the stuff in there is actually pre-rendered or actual models are used. I'm assuming actual models are used because there are cinematics that you can tell are cinematics.
Oh,
Um,
that's so
it
that's
looks
really weird.
it looks really weird, and because it was originally on, I think it was originally either on the Dreamcast or the Saturn. I'm not sure offhand, but it was on a Sega platform and then moved to the PlayStation 1. I'm
But
guessing it was on the Saturn. Um,
I mean, I'm surprised the hardware can handle that if it's really that detailed for its time.
well, here's another thing. It doesn't actually have a lot of stuff in it. It looks believable in the sense that because and these are these small details. So everything is the textures are really, really, really basic. But the main character isn't a, shovel hands, I cannot tell the head from the butt apart type of polygon. So that character actually looks like a very early PlayStation 2 game.
Okay.
It's a really detailed character despite the flat textures. Um, but and this I guess is part of the design idea. Because it's a castle, you instantly forgive the lack of, stuff inside. You know what I mean? It's not like an actual spot you can relate to where you'd expect a lot of background items, so they can actually put in a lower item count in the game, and your brain just processes, oh yeah, well, this is a castle, why would there be, much more detailed stuff? Despite there being a bunch of there's just enough items there to look scarce but still be believable.
Okay.
And and so
I mean, my question is still, like, how do you make a game that's 2 hours and make it 3 discs long? I mean, it must have had to be like largely
Yeah, yeah,
actual video.
it's law. I don't know. That's the problem. I can't tell. I can tell from each other. There is a lot of video, but a lot of the interactions look like it's not video. So whatever the method was, the end result did manage to achieve. Like if I'm left wondering, you can imagine how mind blown people playing back then were.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
And so the game is essentially go, gather items, use items, solve puzzles. That's essentially it. There are some tense moments which look like you can die, but I haven't found anything to indicate that you can actually be killed. The bigger problem is that the game has a 2 hour time limit, real time, and there's no pause, so you have to go, which manages to create a sense of urgency because generally when you're playing point and click adventure games, there's absolutely zero sense of urgency.
Okay.
Uh, it seemed from what I played, so we kind of fiddled around trying to figure out what the rules of the game were. So we spent quite a bit on disc one, but when put into perspective how what you have to do in the first disc of the game, it's essentially something that you could probably beat in 20 to 30 minutes if you know the path.
Okay.
So it's not particularly long. Um, Probably the thing that makes it so long is that the character moves slow as heck, and there's no way to change that. The character is really, really slow.
So, did this game sell well at the time, or was it just forgotten immediately?
Well, it's sold enough to have a sequel, but I think the game is more of a cult following type of deal.
Okay.
So do you know the main controversy about the D?
Nope.
Oh, you're gonna love. This is my favorite game development story ever.
Okay.
So, this is a spoiler, but like it doesn't matter. If you haven't played it so far, you probably won't play it. The
Okay.
controversy is more interesting. So, Kenji Eno was a guy well respected by fellow game developers and not really liked by the Japanese rating board. Why?
Okay.
Um, what happened was when before the game went gold, before they had to, bring the basic discs for mass production. Um, what he did was, without telling any of his fellow developers, he pulled like a few all-nighters and added a different ending to the game, which involved a flashback of the main character realizing that she was under mind control and eating her own mother. And there's a cinematic of that, like the main character actually eating a corpse. Yes. No, no. Oh god, this reaction is priceless.
Too
Uh,
bad nobody can see this, but yeah.
yeah. Oh
Mm.
no, no. We're still going with the story. So he carries both discs with him, and he shows the official version uh, to the rating board, and it's like, oh, okay, it's fine, bring it to mass printing. And back in that day, you didn't, because discs were so you know valuable, you had to go in person and hand over that stuff. So he went by plane to hand it in person for mass production. And in the plane, he switched the disc that was officially rated with the one he edited. And nobody caught on until the game was full into distribution.
Yeah, okay. I like
Th-
this guy. I like
that's
this guy.
that's the stuff like he somehow he probably got into trouble. I from his like general attitude towards stuff, I don't think he gave a shit. Um, but he didn't get sued. He still stayed in the industry. He made a sequel to the game, and he was still active. And
Okay,
he
that's.
pulled that off, which was absolutely amazing and mind-boggling. But as far as him as a game designer goes, I read a few interviews from him and a few interviews about him. He was really forward thinking. There was stuff that this one particular interview from the book called The Untold History of Japanese Game Development, which is an excellent book. It was recently released. It has this collection of Japanese game dev interviews. And one of the interviews was about him, about Kenji Eno with one of his uh, co-workers. And he had this idea that this was extremely cute. He had this idea for an application. He wanted people to be connected. He was like, "Oh, mobile is big, internet is big. We need people to be connected." And this was before years before social media. And he had this idea of an on-screen application on your PC which went through your emails and checked it for keywords, and based on the actual email that you received, it could the actual that screen, that application, that avatar would be either sad if it was uh, a bad email, or happy if it was a good email. And what was the idea behind this? Well, his reasoning was, if he made that kind of application, people would want to see a happy avatar, so they do their best to make people to interact with happy, so they would get happy emails.
Okay,
That was the only motivation behind it.
so the difference between genius and madness is very thin.
Yeah, it is, but it was great. I mean, when I played D, it's if you were just to give it to you know people who didn't want to pay attention, like even if I you know didn't want to pay attention, I would just say, okay, this game has aged extremely badly, and it has. But there are these thin design layers, like that urgency, like that time urgency, or some general technical solutions that just feels like it's extremely flawed, but it has some very good design principles that, with a bigger budget, or now with modern design sensibilities, you could achieve so much more with it. So he knew what he was doing. That's something I'd say essentially.
Yeah, I mean, old games you sort of game is the fastest aging medium around. I mean,
Yeah.
music ages, and films too, though at a slower rate. older games, like games made more than 10 years ago, or like up to 10 years ago, you kind of have to just look past the parts that we wouldn't consider acceptable or good enough today to
Yeah,
find the parts that made them really good,
yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah, sadly, but it's still interesting. I didn't beat it. I actually, so my first reaction was, oh, these puzzles are simple, but then I reached a certain puzzle which I could just not move past, so I'm gonna try and beat it again.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, in general, I think it was a good experience. Other than that, I'm just gonna be quick about it. I played Shadows over Mystara on the PlayStation, the old arcade remake of the D&D beat 'em up from Capcom.
Yeah.
I played with two friends, and that's a game which has aged extremely poorly, and it's one of those games which was carried mostly by its license because it's not good. It hasn't aged well, and we didn't have fun with it.
I
I
can
can
imagine.
I'll just like say that it's really not good. Um, Other than that, I also played Crawl, which is in early access. Have you heard of that?
I've heard the name. I'm not sure if I remember what it actually is, though.
It's a local multiplayer game where it's half co-op, half uh well, it's not really. It's half co-op, half versus game, where one person plays a champion and other players play the monsters, and when one of the monsters kills the player, they become the champion. And the goal is to get to level 10, as in character level 10, and then you can try and fight the boss. And during the boss fight, if the champion dies, he's flung back uh, into the dungeon, and the whole game session has a total of three tries to defeat the boss. And while you're a monster and the player is fighting the boss, since when you're a monster, you're a ghost, and you either take the form of a monster using pentagrams, like or magic symbols, whatever, or you take over traps, or you spawn slimes, whatever. And in the boss part of the game, each player can take over a limb of the boss and attack
Okay.
the champion. And it's still in early access. It's really, 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 really light on content, but it's interesting enough. I give it a local multiplayer recommendation.
Yeah, which isn't much of a recommendation for me because my local friends are boring. No, okay,
Well,
that's not entirely true. My local friends are very busy. That's the real
well,
issue.
well. To be honest, like I play local multiplayer sessions twice a month, maybe. I mean, I'm also super busy, but yeah. I'd say keep an eye on it because I got it as a gift. I didn't buy it. I don't condone. I'm not a condone. That's too strong a word. I'm not a particular fan of early access games for most part, with the rare few exceptions. But for most part, I'm not a fan.
I mean, uh, I'm a fan of the idea. I'm not a
I'm a fan of the
fan of many of the games using them. I
yeah
I just think that maybe they shouldn't be displayed as prominently on the Steam store as they are,
yeah.
and
That's my general attitude as well. I
and
mean,
like
some games do it well.
as long as everyone involved is clear about like the idea that this game may never be any more than what it already is, and if you buy it, you either do it as a donation basically to the developers or because you find the game that it already is worth buying.
Yep, I agree completely with that. But yeah, that was about it. And also, I've recently been playing Dark Souls. Yeah, that's a surprise. That was the video editing if you didn't know it's on our channel. Uh, so in an attempt to do something fun because podcasting is fun, and an attempt to actually garner the interest of more people and basically direct them all to this podcast because anything we do is just because we want a podcast.
Mm.
Yeah, we started doing well, we can call them let's plays, I guess.
It's the closest name for it,
And it's
especially as we're doing this as a uh, YouTube thing and not a live stream thing.
yeah. Okay, so essentially it's a Dark Souls Let's Play, and so how the idea came to be. So because we want a podcast and because we want to also do other content that maybe will spotlight the podcast among other things, and because it's also fun because
Yeah,
if this isn't fun, why do it? We're obviously not in it for the money because haha YouTube money. Um, but
YouTube money on a podcast will have 40 views at most.
oh yeah, I mean like I could totally buy an ice cream cone with that.
Ooh.
Maybe even get two flavors if we do well. Um, but in general, we wanted to do some more stuff, and the idea was, okay, we can essentially do either co-op games versus games or single player games because those are all games that exist in the world. And so we went through the list and figured, okay, we can do a single player game and make it interesting by one person screen sharing and playing it, and the other person watching and commenting as they play it. And when you break down that category, it's either games we are both familiar with, games only one person is familiar with, and games neither of us are familiar with, which we'll probably not do the last one because I don't think we can make it interesting at this stage of our career.
We'll see what we're interested in, when we're interested in it. Right now, we chose Dark Souls because I know the game very well, and Mirdrag does not, and it would be funny to just have me laughing at him forever while he's dying.
Well, yeah, but according to the last six episodes, I did better than most people who don't like Dark Souls.
You did better than most people I've seen try their hand at Dark Souls.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
Well, it's mostly because I do not trust that game.
Well, I mean,
I
you
don't trust
shouldn't.
anything. I don't trust anything in that game. I once trusted that game and I died.
You trusted it and it stabbed you in the back.
Yeah, that was it. Like, I mean, whatever happens, I question it, and it's about the first episode is already up, and depending on when um this podcast goes live, probably another episode will be up. I guess
Yeah.
we're so we don't want to put up 3 hour videos because that is absolutely stupid.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't agree that it's stupid, but I don't have particularly strong opinions on video length, and I mean, I know a lot of other people do. So most people seem to prefer around 20 to 30-minute videos for these kinds of things. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, that's what we're going for. 20 to 30 minutes, and we are uploading daily. So we take one session, film it, chop it up with actual in-game pauses, so it feels more natural. So you're not like so we don't cut the video mid-swing or something and just ruin the
Yeah,
pace or leave it in a cliffhanger.
we're trying to apply our low quality standards from the podcast to the rest of our stuff,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. But right now we're also trying. Well, I'm trying to figure out how to video edit because at the moment Johnny edits the podcast. I started doing that, but then I taught him how to edit it, so I wouldn't do it anymore.
I
But
don't mind it. It's pretty quick most of the time. This one is gonna be a pain to edit. I fear.
yeah, but oh well, such is life. Um, I mean, I lost 6 hours last night, so fuck you.
Yeah, that must have been really fun.
So what happened is since we're figuring out a lot of this as we go. I mean, we have some basic standards taken from content we have already consumed or stuff we have learned from other people and some, common sense. But for most part, we're trying to figure this out as we go. So I was trying to find a local, like a freeware video editing software, and I tried a few, and the video compression was absolutely unacceptable. I mean, it's viewable, but viewable really isn't a standard we're aiming for.
Right. Basically, what we're doing is we've been the fallback solution we've been using is like using YouTube editing.
Yeah, and that carries with itself a ton of other
Some
problems.
yeah. So if anyone listening to this has any recommendation for video editing software, preferably with a usable free version, that would be cool.
Well, last night after I was done with everything, someone recommended Lightworks, and I used Lightworks to quickly edit something. God, like so that program, it works. It does good compression, but oh my God, is that complicated? Like it's obviously meant as the closest to professional video editing you can get to free, and
I mean,
I want us to aim for professional standards, but we're essentially just trimming and cutting videos. We aren't doing anything fancy.
we're doing Windows Movie Maker level edits.
Yeah, except we are not touching Windows Movie Maker because that that's like that's a Pandora's box we do not want to open.
Yeah, nah, no,
No.
let's not touch that.
But yeah,
Um,
the other problem what I encountered last night was um I set all the videos I uploaded and edited to private and figured, oh, okay, when I set it to public, it's gonna be in people's subscriptions boxes. Well, yes, it's gonna be in people's subscription boxes, but it's gonna use the date it was uploaded at, so it's completely useless because we have 6 episodes, which is 6 days worth of content. So the alternate solution is I'm gonna like take off all those videos and then re-upload them again. And we have to do scheduling of videos because really taking aside time to upload every video each day is something I cannot do, and I think in the long run it's not something we should be doing because it's more hassle than it's worth.
yeah, that's just why would we do that?
Yeah, so in order to do that, we had to enable monetization, and you know,
Which that probably means more ads on our channel. I'm not exactly clear on how YouTube handles that stuff now, but at least previously having monetization on meant more ads, which is a thing. I mean, I guess most people are used to it on YouTube now, but I still would have preferred not using it. Especially like it's not like we're making any money here. We're only enabling that in order to get the video
yeah,
scheduling thing. So this is really silly.
yeah,
So
it's really stupid because that's the only way. If there's a way to at least limit ads to those that banner crap, because I don't want preloaded videos on our videos. I don't like that.
yeah, I mean, like from my perspective, if we were going to make money off of this, which we're not in a position to do, and it's not what we're looking to do, but if
Yeah,
we were, I'd rather, even then, I'd rather like do something like that Patreon bullshit or something like that than
yeah,
try to
yeah.
go for YouTube ad money. Like that seems like a really silly way to handle stuff.
Well, it's that kind of stuff that's only after a certain threshold it actually gets pretty big money.
Yeah, I mean, you have to basically be Total Biscuit.
Well, Bill Biscuit, PewDiePie, or well, it depends. I mean, I have a friend
Is
who
PewDiePie still the biggest YouTube channel?
I think he is.
That's so insane to me. He's a very clever businessman who is very good at playing an idiot on camera.
Yeah, and when he's off camera or just doing those serious videos like updates, he seems extremely reasonable actually.
Yeah, he seems like a good person. That's
Yeah,
like surprising if you had just like seen the periphery of his work, but he seems like a cool guy.
yeah. Um, but anyway, what I want to say is, um, well, so yeah, you completely ruined my train of thought. Yeah, my friend, Serbian friend, she has so people can't disclose YouTube money, so obviously like how much you earn, so obviously she didn't. But she's from Serbia, and I think she partnered with a network, and she has something like 50,000 subscribers, maybe more, last time I checked. And it's so this is the funny thing. It's probably not objectively decent money. Like if you were living in the U.S. or in a proper country, you'd probably be better off with a full-time job with all the benefits associated with it. But since she's in Serbia, the ad money she gets is actually pretty good for Serbian standards.
Yeah, I mean, money is worth different amounts everywhere. Like, you can do
Yeah,
a straight conversion, whatever. That doesn't really say the whole picture.
yeah. But also, the channel has now officially moved from Serbia to Sweden because otherwise we couldn't have enabled monetization. So Johnny, balls in your court.
Yeah, woo. Yeah.
It was
I expect us to get pretty much exactly zero money out of this.
yeah. I mean,
And
like
if we somehow end up with a little bit of money on our YouTube account, we'll uh, like we'll probably put that towards hosting costs in the future or something.
like
If that's
host.
what happens.
I mean, like essentially, my attitude is any money from this channel goes back to the channel. So that's hosting and probably like getting hardware we might need for better content as well because apparently my mic is pretty bad at echoing.
It's not like we're going to make enough money to put that
Yeah,
towards any hardware. Like
yeah,
that's not a real. That's never. Okay, I'm not gonna say never, but I don't foresee that ever being a reality for us.
yeah. I expect us if we do actually achieve something to be like C-grade celebrities. You know, that niche everybody listens to because we're cool and alternative and don't have a mainstream following. Like we'll be like I need a band equivalent for this. Give me a band equivalent for this.
I have no idea.
We'd be like a second group. No, we like wouldn't even be like Machina Supremacy. We'd be that. We'd be like Horse the band. Like that. That's the top.
Oh God,
That's the top level of notoriety I expect of us.
is that what we're shooting for? Horse the band, the podcast.
Well, no, not like. Well, not directly. I'm just saying of like when you say chiptune bands or well bands with elements of chiptune, you have Anamanaguchi, and then you have Machina Supremacy, and then you have Horse the Band, and I'm guessing well, the best we can reach is Horse the Band.
Yeah. God, Anamanaguchi got really popular really quickly.
Oh yeah, yeah, they got like super big. Uh,
Really cool band.
I mean, I don't believe in selling out as like not like as a concept, but I don't believe that we can actually make proper content by selling out, nor that we would actually succeed by selling out. I don't think that's a thing.
Like,
I mean, selling out
we're
as in doing content we expect to be extremely popular. I'm more for the variant. We'll do content that's interesting for us and hopefully like-minded people, or maybe people who aren't like-minded but respect our approach to things will find it interesting enough.
like my expectation is that all the people who actually listen to our stuff knows one or two of us directly.
Well, yeah, but who
So
knows?
far, at least. I
So,
mean,
well, so far it's that. So far, the reason why we don't get comments but actually get views is because most people who check it out actually talk to me. I don't know on Facebook or on Steam. I know people who listen to this entire thing and it's 1 hour long.
yeah, I mean, whatever. We're the point is we're enabling YouTube monetization for reasons other than the money. I have no idea why YouTube is tying this to monetization. It's really silly, but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, it's because we
and
want scheduling.
and like from my perspective, if you're a person who uses ad block, I don't care
Yeah.
at all. Like that's a thing that people will do, and whatever. I could not care less.
Yeah. I mean, like, do what you gotta do. If you don't think this is worth ad money, then listen without ad money. I'm more than happy to just like offer content to people if they enjoy it.
Like everyone has their own principles of how they use ad block. Like,
Yeah,
and I'm not gonna like, oh, it's morally completely fine. It so much depends on like what kind of ads does this site do. Is that like really intrusive? And it's a complicated mess, and it's not like we can reverse this trend anyway. Ad money is basically dying.
yeah, it is. That's why so many people are going to Patreon. Like, have you seen like Jim Sterling's Patreon?
I never looked at the numbers. I saw it when it just went up.
It's like at the last time I checked, it was like almost 8,000.
Yeah, I bet that he's making more money now than he did with The Escapist already.
I mean, it's deserved. He had a long career he built up on, who worked
I
on.
mean, he's also a smart businessman because he's built his brand instead of contributing to other people's brands.
Yeah, which is something back in the day I didn't like. I didn't like all personalities emerging in content because, you go to a site and it's like, oh yeah, it's this guy being, I don't know, he has the shtick of being angry or being controversial or whatever,
I
and
mean,
it feels. I'm just gonna finish it. Like it feels it's more about his attitude than the content he's putting out. But in the long run, actually, it's the smart thing to do.
even like it stuck out at first because that wasn't what people were doing in games press
Yeah,
traditionally.
yeah,
But I mean, it it's both the smart business move, and I think it's actually better for them, for games press as a whole, that
yeah,
we stop associating like this review was from this site. No, this review was written by a person who worked at this site. Like when IGN publishes a review by one guy that gives a game a 8.0 and another review by another guy who gives another game a 7.0, that isn't IGN saying this game is better than that game. That's two different IGN writers saying this game is this good and this game is this good.
yeah. And I mean, the end result is that the common guy doesn't know how to name an IGN reviewer by name, but most of them know who, like, I don't know, Jim Sterling is, or Total Biscuit, or Angry Joe, or all these personalities.
Yeah, I mean, I like if I were to create a games blog site and do it with other people, I would do my utmost to present the people writing there in the spotlight instead of the site's name as the spotlight.
Yeah, yeah, that makes
Because
sense.
that's the kind of environment I would like to write in if I were to write for a site like that. And I don't know why anyone else, like, I wouldn't want to be part of a site that just tries to push its own name if I were doing that sort of thing.
well, I think it's more, it's a company kind of like attitude. A lot of companies also do that.
Yeah,
Um,
but like that attitude worked much better like at a time where like wh- where people could work at the same company for their whole lives. That isn't how most jobs work anymore. That, and particularly not how games press works.
I mean, I've had contact with companies that do the same thing, but then one company's attitude is, it's not about the individual, it's about us all whole as a group. And whenever there's talk about anything the company does, it's, usually as a group, like we are doing this and we are doing that. And then the other company's attitude is, like, we want individuals, we want people who want their name out there in the spotlight, and they're doing the exact
I
same
mean,
branch.
it makes different approaches make sense for different companies, of course. But I'm not sure how the IGN approach survives in today's internet. I mean, I think IGN survives simply because it's old.
That's also a thing.
That's why it's known. It's known because it's been around.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can say that everything is quote unquote dying. I mean, ad money, that kind of attitude to sites. I don't know what else. I mean, like, you could say that reviews as a cool or quote unquote dying, and it's all based on user reviews now. I don't know. I mean, it's all mostly bullshit. It's just that uh, various different approaches are becoming more and more valid.
Yeah, sure. Like I wouldn't say that reviews are dying. I would say that certain approaches to reviews may be dying, and the review may be changing a bit.
Yeah.
And
But that
that
comes with new ways to generally digest content. I mean,
yeah,
video reviewing is big now.
video previews. Like honestly, like if I'm not sure where this tangent came from, but anyway, like
Go with it, that sort of thing.
go with it. Okay, I think that the giant bomb quick look format is the way you do like product recommendation in the age of video.
Okay.
That's product recommendation. Like, that's how people see, is this a game? Like, is this a game I am interested in playing? Is this a game I want as a product? That's the best way to shine a spotlight on that stuff. A more long form review is more something along the lines of like enthusiasts, like readers, people who are really into this kind of stuff and really want to read all the details. And then there's like we should have, I think, we don't have too much of right now, but we should have a second wave of art criticism coming back later for those same products, and basically being, okay, we played through all of this now, we had time to think over it, what do we think about this as an art piece later on. That's, in my view, like roughly how the smart ways to operate would be.
Yeah. Oh, I just got an idea. So if we ever get big and make our own website, no, hear me out. And then we decide, oh, we always wanted to do like art criticism content, like look back on stuff because that's good, and we decide to do that. Then, because we'll be called, we'll be branded Score Attack. When we go back to that game to criticize it, we can call that a particular series of pieces the high score. I see
I'm
you
not
love
sure.
it. I
I'm
see
not
you love it.
sure.
I see you love it.
I'm really divided on it because I like it, but I hate it.
No, it's great. It's so awful that people will be like, they'll love it. They love that kind
Look,
of stuff.
that's whatever. Anyway, I think that's the podcast for this week.
Yeah, that's it. We actually focused on stuff we did, except then rather
than just being like going all up our own asses on a specific topic. We just talked about things we've been doing. Wow,
yeah,
we can
yeah,
do that.
yeah. And then next week, after we've had 7 episodes behind us, we can actually talk about the episodes in full detail. Because there's this one particular thing I did that was very interesting.
Yeah, this is referring to
The Dark Souls
thing.
series, yeah, watch it. Subscribe and you will see what happens.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out a way for us to do this, to post this on our WordPress site as well, in a way that makes sense. I think I have some ideas in that direction, but we'll talk more about that
Yeah. Okay,
later.
that's about it.
Anyway,
Thank you
yeah,
for listening in. See ya. Bye.
goodbye.